Hi, Chebe. What's going on? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chafei of Masechta Sukkah. And L'chaim, I'm recording today with a cup of coffee. Exciting times, right? Right. L'chaim. I can just feel that caffeine going straight to the brain. It's nice. Alright, what does today's daf talk about? The first part of the daf, of course, like every daf, well, that's not true. It's not like every daf. That's not true at all. But today is one of those dafs where it continues from where we left off yesterday, which is discussing the walls of a sukkah and how they have to be sturdy. They can't blow in the wind. And then we get to a Mishnah that says that people who are messengers on their way to doing a mitzvah are patur from the sukkah. We then talk about the source of Osek b'mitzvah, patur min mitzvah. We'll see a Gemara that we've seen at least on 2 occasions before, maybe even 3. And we'll see 2 proofs, 2 bases, 2 reasons why shluchei sources for why shluchei Osek b'mitzvah, patur min mitzvah. And that is, I would say, kind of the main sugyas over here. We also discussed the shtickle at the end, chosin being patur from sukkah, but I'd say this main sugya there is really ha'osek b'mitzvah, patur min mitzvah. Alright, let's go weiter. So, we're on Daf Chafei Mud Aleph, 3 lines from the top. Ta, Shma, coming here. Shavas betel shu gavoa asare. Okay, if a fellow, of course this is a Gemara that we've seen in Masechta Eruvin, that if a fellow spends Shabbos on a like a little pile, I guess, a little mound that is 10 tfachim tall and 4 amis wide, me'arba amis ad beis ha'asayim, its width is between 4 amis and a beis ha'asayim, which of course is the size of a karpaf. Or in some kind of cleft in a rock that is 10 tefachim deep and also is from 4 amis until a beis ha'asayim. Okay. And this is an important part for us. Similarly, if a fellow is in like let's say there was like a wheat field and you kind of harvested a whole area of the wheat field, and this area is surrounded by unharvested standing stalks of wheat, and you've kind of harvested this whole area. I imagine those I don't know, maybe I'm making it up, but kind of those aerial photos of those circles in fields that are harvested. I don't know, maybe that's just in my mind. Is that a thing? Anyways, so if you harvest a whole bunch of wheat, Vishibolos makifos osa, and there's standing wheat surrounding the harvested area, you can walk in that whole area as well as outside of it 2,000 amis, even though the wheat stalks are able to blow in the wind. So the point being, how could it be that these are considered walls, these wheat stalks, if they can blow in the wind? They're also, you kind of secured them and kept them solid by weaving in, I don't know, palm branches and stuff, making it strong. But if they just blew in the wind, then they would not be considered a wall, a machitza. Okay, gewaldig. Okay, just have to stick more coffee. Alright, let's go weiter. Sagt the Mishnah, Shluchei mitzvah pturin min hasukkah. You hear that, friends? People who are messengers on their way to do a mitzvah, on a mitzvah mission, pturin min hasukkah, they are patur from eating, sleeping in a sukkah. Cholin shamshen pturin min, meaning from the mitzvah of sukkah. Cholin shamshen pturin min hasukkah. People who are unwell, as well as people tending towards them, taking care of them, patur from sukkah. Ochlim v'shosen arayich chutz sukkah. Additionally, you can eat and drink in a temporary manner outside of the sukkah. So you don't have to, if you're outside, if you're eating just something temporary, we'll have to define what temporary is. But if you're eating in a temporary manner, you do not need to be in a sukkah. So the Gemara wants to know, how do we know this? How do we know what? How do we know that a Osek b'mitzvah patur min a mitzvah? That a fellow who is busy doing a mitzvah is patur from doing other mitzvahs. So, therefore, in our case, if you're a shliach mitzvah, if you're on your way on a mission, a mitzvah mission, so you're patur from sukkah. The Tanur Rabbanan, the Rabbis taught in Brisa, b'shivtecha b'veisecha prad Osek mitzvah cheved. This is like one of the first Gemaras we learned together as a team. Back, I think it was Daf 11, Daf Yud Aleph, Masechta Brachos already. Forever ago. A lifetime ago. B'shivtecha b'veisecha prad Osek b'mitzvah. That the pasuk says that you read Kretschmer, you read Kriyashma, b'shivtecha b'veisecha. When you're sitting in your house, you're sitting around, that's when you read Kriyashma. Prad Osek b'mitzvah, to the exclusion of somebody who's busy doing a mitzvah. If you're not just sitting around, but you're busy doing a mitzvah, so then you're patur from reading Kriyashma v'lechtecha v'derech. And when you travel on the way, even while you're traveling, I remember, right, Jordan one time was learning Babylon Talmud in a white water rafting trip, if I remember correctly. Even while you're traveling, you're steiging. Prad l'chasen. To the exclusion of a chasen. That a chasen, a groom, on the first night of his wedding, he's patur from Kriyashma. Okay? Mikan Omru. From here they said, a fellow who's getting married to a virgin is patur from Kriyashma, but somebody who's getting married to a widow is chayiv to read Kriyashma. Fine. My mashma. How do we extrapolate these learnings from b'shivtecha b'veisecha uv'lechtecha v'derech? Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, kederech, right? It says b'shivtecha b'veisecha uv'lechtecha v'derech. You read Kriyashma in a way that's similar to a derech, to a way. Ma derech rishus av kol rishus. So just like when I go on my way, when I go whitewater rafting, it's my choice. So in those cases, when I'm going volitionally, so that's when I read Kriyashma, that's when I study Torah. La'afuke hai, to the exclusion of this fellow, somebody who's going to do a mitzvah, de b'mitzvah asuk. Because, right, to the exclusion of somebody who's doing a mitzvah. Somebody who's doing a mitzvah, so he's going to be patur from Kriyashma. Okay? Milos ginu dekazul devar mitzvah v'kam rachman alikre. Correcting Gemara, wait a second. Maybe what the pasuk is saying, that even while you are on the way, even if it's a mitzvah, kilu, maybe it's b'lechtecha v'derech, when you're going on any way, even including a mitzvah way. No, if that was the case, that it's in any time that you're on a journey, you read Kriyashma, so then it should say b'sheves uveleches, my b'shivtecha uvelechtecha. What does it mean? You're sitting and you're going. B'leches didachud m'chayeves, that you're only chayiv to read Kriyashma when it's your own, mission, like your own journey, a volitional journey. That's when you're chayiv to read Kriyashma. Hab'leches the mitzvah p'tiras. But if you are on the way to do a mitzvah, which is God's journey, so then you're patur from reading Kriyashma. If this is the case, so then the Gemara says, wait, but if the whole inyan over here is about Osek b'mitzvah patur min a mitzvah, so then marrying a widow is also a mitzvah. How can we say that only marrying a basula is patur from Kriyashma, but marrying a widow, an almana, is chayiv in Kriyashma? It's a mitzvah also. So konis is basula tarid, konis is almana lo tarid. That when a fellow marries a basula, so he's more worked up about it. He's more I guess it's more consuming on his mind, and he can't focus on Kriyashma. Whereas if he's marrying an almana, I guess it's less, it's less, I guess, distracting ultimately, and therefore we say he could focus on reading Kriyas Shema. So the Gemara says, wait, but what? So being unable to focus means whenever you can't focus, so you're patur from reading Kriyas Shema. So what if a fellow is boat, is shipping in the sea? I mean, that's shver. Fellow's got a boat and it's sinking. That seems pretty shver. And I would not be surprised if he is unable to focus on Kriyas Shema. So should he be patur from reading Kriyas Shema because he can't focus? So v'chitema achinami. And if you're going to say, yep. Whenever a person can't focus, he's patur from reading Kriyas Shema. That an ovel, a mourner who certainly is unable, unfocused, right? Somebody just passed away. He's very distracted, can't think straight. He's chayav in all of the mitzvahs in the Torah, chutz min tefillin, the exception being tefillin, sherei nemar ben pe'er, because it says by them like glory, you have to be in a situation of glory in order to wear tefillin, peseder. It's an exception to the rule, but what's the rule? The rule is that a mourner does do all of the mitzvahs. Now, a mourner is somebody who is unable to focus, and that doesn't seem to be making a difference. So, what's the deal? Like, how come that a chosin, because he's unable to focus, so he's patur from Kriyas Shema, yet seemingly in every other case where you're unable to focus, you're chayev? So, achatar tir to the mitzvah, some tar tir to the rishos. Have you hear the answer? The Gemara answers that, well, by a chosin, it's not just a inability to focus, it's an inability to focus in the context of a mitzvah, the context of getting married and being with his wife. So therefore, because it's a tirda de mitzvah, that's why he is patur from reading Kriyas Shema, as opposed to a fellow's ship is sinking, or a mourner where they're unable to focus, but it's not a mitzvah. It's not just unable to focus because of a mitzvah. You're just unable to focus. So that's not a reason to skip Kriyas Shema. But tirda de mitzvah, then you're patur from Kriyas Shema. Very nice. So what do we see? So we see from B'shivtecha b'veisecha v'lechtecha v'derech that ha'osek b'mitzvah patur min hamitzvah. Fact, the Gemara ha'osek b'mitzvah patur min hamitzvah me'hacha nafka me'osam nafka. The Gemara says, wait a minute. Is that really the source of ha'osek min hamitzvah patur min hamitzvah? It comes from here. 1 second. Coffee. Boom. Right to the brain. All right. The Tanyas, we learned in the Brayso, that there were fellows, and these fellows were impure. No, we learned about this in Masechta Pesachim, right? That if people are tamei, they're unable to bring the Pesach Rishon. Of course, they bring the Pesach Sheni, a big part of Masechta Pesachim. Who were these people that were tamei and were unable, right? People came to Moshe Rabbeinu, they said, look, we're tamei, we can't bring the Korban Pesach, what do we do? Who were these people? And for the Gemara, no Se'arono Shel Yosef Hayu Divrei Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. Says Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, they were the people who were carrying the coffin of Yosef HaTzadik from Egypt. Right, what does the pasuk say? What is it? In Parashat Shlach, it says, Ki ashbea yishbia es bnei Yisrael lemor. What is it? V'alisem esatz Mosai mizeh eitchem. Whatever it is. So they brought the bones of Yosef HaTzadik out of Mitzrayim, and they brought them with them. So Rabbi Yosef says that those people who were carrying the coffin of Yosef HaTzadik, they were tamei. And they were unable to bring the Korban Pesach, so they're the ones who approached Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, fine. Rabbi Akiva says that they were Mishael ve'el Tzafon. Who were Mishael ve'el Tzafon? 1 second. Elazar and Isamar. No, Mishael and El Tzafon. 1 second. There's Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Isamar. They were the children of Aharon. Who were Mishael ve'el Tzafon? Mishael and El Tzafon. Who were they? Okay, yeah, so Mishael and Eltzafan, oh gosh, I gotta use my brain a little bit over here. They were the sons of Uziel, who were the brother of Yitzhar, and like Amram. Alright, one second. There was a guy named Avram Avinu, and he had a child named Yitzchak Avinu, he had a child named Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu had 12 children. One of them was Levi. Levi had 3 children. Korach, Gershon, Kehos, and Merari. Great. Kehos had 4 children. Amram, Yitzhar, Eltzafan, and Uziel. Okay? Now, Amram, of course, was the father of Moshe and Aharon. Yitzhar, one of his children was Korach. Okay? Now, Uziel had 2 children, Mishael and Eltzafan. So they were basically the first cousins of Korach. And also, I guess, the first cousins of Moshe and Aharon. And anyways, so we're saying that they were busy with dealing with the Nadav and Avihu after they passed away. Well, there you go. So it says with Bakive that these people who were Tameh were Mishael and Eltzafan, that they were busy with Nadav Avihu. Rabbi Yitzchak Omer, says Rabbi Yitzchak, who's Rabbi Yitzchak? Meaning, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Rabbi Akiva. Who's Rabbi Yitzchak? What, was he contemporary of Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva? I don't know. Rabbi Yitzchak Omer says, Rabbi Yitzchak, Im Nosei Arono Shel Yosef Hayu, if they were the right? Rabbi Yitzchak asked the kasha, right? No. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that the people who were Tameh were the people who were carrying the coffin of Yosef. Rabbi Kiva says it was Mishael and Eltzafan who were dealing with Nadav and Avihu. Frekt Rabbi Yitzchak, I don't understand. If we're talking about the people who were carrying the coffin of Yosef HaTzadik, well, the Korban Pesach happened in the 2nd year after they left Mitzrayim in Iyar. Basically, they were still at Chorev, where they received the Torah. They hadn't moved since then. Nobody had to touch the coffin of Yosef HaTzadik for months and months. There was plenty of time for them to become tahor. So it says Rabbi Yitzchak, I don't understand. If we're talking about the people who were carrying the coffin of Yosef, it's not like they were actively carrying the coffin of Yosef. They were sitting in Chorev for like almost a year, I think, maybe even in more than a year. This was Iyar of the 2nd year. They got to Nisan Iyar Sivan. So probably maybe 10, 11 months already. They had plenty of time to go to the mikveh. And, become tahor. Paraduma and all that stuff. Even the paraduma was already an option, was already available. In Mishael Eltzafan ayu, Yichol nayu litayr. Also Mishael and Eltzafan. There was plenty of time. Oh, 1 second. Iyar would have been Sivan. Now I'm confused. Why is this Iyar? No, this isn't Iyar. This is obviously Nisan, because we're talking about the Korban Pesach. But still, meaning is Nisan of the 2nd year, and the Yidden had already been at Chorev from like Sivan of the previous year. Okay, plenty of time. And also if it's Mishael and Eltzafan, so Nadav and Avihu died on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. This is already, the Korban Pesach is already 2 weeks later. So says Rabbi Yitzchak, I don't understand if we're talking about the people who are carrying the coffin of Yosef, or if we're talking about Mishael and Eltzafan who were dealing with Nadav and Avihu. In both cases, they could have already been tahor by the time that Korban Pesach rolls around. So he says, I don't understand. Rather, there were people who were dealing with a meis mitzvah. Now Rashi points out it doesn't davka have to be a meis mitzvah. What's a meis mitzvah? Meis mitzvah is you find the corpse lying somewhere and you say, wow, if I don't take care of this mace, then nobody is. So you take care of the mace. That's a meis mitzvah. Now Rashi points out it doesn't davka have to be a meis mitzvah. It can even be an immediate relative. So Ella oskim b'meis mitzvah hayu. Rather, says Rabbi Yitzchak, no. There were people who a relative had passed away a week earlier, and now it was mamish the last day of being tameh. That night already, they're going to be tahor, and the kasha is, can they participate in a in the Korban Pesach. Shechoshvi shelo lios be'erev Pesach. That their last day of Tumah, their 7th day of Tumas Hameis, was on Erev Pesach. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, v'lo yachlu la'asos ha'Pesach bayom hahu. That day, they were unable to do the Korban Pesach. Bayom hahu, ein yicholin la'asos, ha'lamachu yicholin la'asos. That day they couldn't do the Korban Pesach, but the next day they could have been able to do it. It was their last day of being Tameh. If they would have become Tameh one day earlier, then they would have been able to already bring the Korban Pesach. So what do we see? Chevah, what do we see after all this? We see Osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. How do we see that? Because these are people who 1 week prior, their relative passed away, and they had to ask themselves, wait, on the one hand I have to bury my relative, on the other hand, by burying my relative, I'm going to be unable to bring the Korban Pesach. So does the mitzvah of burying my relative outweigh the mitzvah of Korban Pesach? And what do we say? We say yes. Osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. That because you were busy burying your relative, you're going to be patur from the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, and you'll bring a Pesach Sheni. So we see from there, Osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. So fact the Gemara, do we learn out Osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah from Kriyat Shema, or do we learn out Osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah from Korban Pesach? So answer the Gemara, tzricha. We taka need to teach Osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah twice. The Ashminun Hasum. If I would only have the example of Korban Pesach, Mishum de Lomatos Man Chiyuv de Pesach, I might think, okay, fine, in that case, by Korban Pesach, 1 week prior, they were able to bury their relatives because it wasn't yet, there was no Chiyuv yet to offer the Korban Pesach. Of course, right, the mitzvah to offer the Korban Pesach is on Erev Pesach, in the afternoon. This was a week prior. So I might be able to argue that, yeah, sure, if they made a cheshbon, they could figure out the truth is, maybe we shouldn't bury our relative now because in a week from now we won't be able to bring the Korban Pesach. The fact of the matter is, it wasn't yet the time to offer the Korban Pesach, so I can understand why we would say, yeah, go for it. Bury your relative, even though it means you won't be able to bring the Korban Pesach in a week from now, because it wasn't yet the time, there was no chiyuv yet to bring the Korban Pesach. Aval, hochaduzmatazman kriyashma emalo. But over here, by a chosin, we say he's patur from Kriyat Shema. At the time of his chuppah, it was already the nighttime, maybe. And he was already chayav to read Kriyat Shema from before he became a chosin and was Torah tir to the mitzvah. So am I thinking in that case, maybe we would be chayav to read Kriyat Shema. Tzricha, therefore we have to say, no, even in the case where, like Mamsh at the time that he's Osek b'mitzvah, the chiyuv of the mitzvah already kicked in first. Still, he's going to be patur from Kriyat Shema. Osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. V'yashminun hacha. And if we would only have the case of the chosin by Kriyat Shema, mishum deleka karis, because, okay, what's the worst thing that, Kriyat Shema is a mitzvah saseh. So, you mavato mitzvah saseh, certainly not a good thing, but it's not exactly karis. When it comes to Korban Pesach, dika karis, emalo. Whereas Mam Shachiv Karis, if you don't offer the Korban Pesach, so I might think that even a week prior, you shouldn't be able to partake in a mitzvah that's gonna, prevent you from bringing the Korban Pesach. I.e., you shouldn't bury your relative because then you won't be able to offer the Korban Pesach. And Korban Pesach is a Chiv Karis. So maybe I would say, even a week prior, you shouldn't be burying a relative. Tzricha. Therefore, we have to say no. Even by Korban Pesach, Osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah, and you should be burying your relative. Givaldik. So we learn Osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. Geshmak. Gufa, we learned earlier, Reb Abba bar Zabda Amar Rab, said Reb Abba bar Zabda, the name of Rab, Ovel chai b'chol mitzvah samur b'Torah, that a mourner is chayiv in all of the mitzvahs in the Torah. Chutz mitfilin shari nemar bo'ed pe'er. Because, with the exception being tefillin. Tefillin, it says glory in the context of tefillin, so you should only wear tefillin in a state of glory. And if you're mourning, you're not in a state of glory, and therefore you don't wear tefillin. However, every other mitzvah, Avel, a mourner is chayv. We do Amalei Rachman Lichezkel, from the fact that the Torah says to Yechezkel, that God says to Yechezkel, Per chachavo shalecha v'gomer, that the Eibishter tells Yechezkel that his wife is going to pass away. And he tells Yechezkel, look, I don't want you to do any acts of mourning. And he says, what does the pasuk say? He oneg dom, don't mourn, Mesim Eva lo taise, don't show acts of mourning. Percha chavoshalecha, I want you to wear your tefillin. Unalecha tosim baraglecha, I want you to wear normal shoes. Velosaita al sofam, someone cover your face. Velecha manashim lo socha, don't be fed by other people. Meaning, we learn out from here all these minhagim, all these things that in Avel that a mourner does, don't do. So we see, meaning we say don't do X, Y, and Z like a mourner would do. So we see, okay, I guess a mourner does all those things. So you're the one, Yechezkel, you're the one who should wear shoes, who should wear tefillin, should do all the things that Avelim don't usually do. Aval kuli ama ptire. But in general, in Avel would be meaning he's saying when it comes to tefillin, you wear tefillin, but in general, in Avel would be patur. On the first day of Avelus, that the first day is Dafka, the most bitter day. And says the name of Rav Avel Chayv b'Sukkah. And Avel is Chayv in the mitzvah of Sukkah. Pshita. The Gemara says, obviously, Rav Avda just said the name of Rav, that an Avel is Chayv in every single mitzvah except for tefillin. So why would I have the Haminit to say that an Avel is patur from Sukkah? Because I may have thought to say, because since Rava says that somebody who's uncomfortable is mitzta'er, he is patur from the sukkah, so I might think, well, somebody who is mourning is also uncomfortable, is also in an uncomfortable state, so maybe he should also be patur from sukkah. So kamash malon hanimili tzar de memele, that when we say that mitzta'er is patur min a sukkah, somebody who's uncomfortable is patur from the sukkah, it's somebody who's uncomfortable because of the sukkah. I don't know, maybe it's too cold, maybe it's too hot, maybe, I don't know, some issue with the sukkah that he's very uncomfortable, he can't be in the sukkah. But over here by Avelus, where it's a mental state. It's a mental state, he's feeling kind of, schlecht. Well, he's got to get his act together and snap into enjoying himself in the sukkah. It's not going, right? Being an Avel is not going to be a reason. It's not going to be considered mitzta'er patur min a sukkah. Mitzta'er patur min a sukkah is if it's raining out, if it's too cold, something like that. But a mental, just your own personal mental state, we say you're still going to be chayav in sukkah. Fine, because in Avel is chayav in all the mitzvahs, the only exception being tefillin. A groom, as well as all the people, all of his friends, and all the people involved in the simcha, patur min sukkah, everybody is patur from the sukkah. Interesting. Kol shiva for all 7 days of the celebration. My time outcome mishum debo lemerdei. Because they have to be happy. Okay, v'lechtu b'sukkah. So why don't they just be happy in the sukkah? Why are they patur from the sukkah? Eat in the sukkah, be happy in the sukkah. In simcha ele b'chuppah. No, because the happiness dafka has to be by the chuppah. V'lechtu b'chuppah. Okay, so be happy by the chuppah, but eat in the sukkah. In simcha ele b'makom suda. Yeah, but the happiness is only in the place where you're eating, and therefore you're gonna have to eat and be happy in the chuppah. V'levdu chuppah b'sukkah. So why don't you just do the chuppah in the sukkah, and then you can be happy and eat in the sukkah? Abai says that no, that you can't do the chuppah in the sukkah because of yichud, because the sukkah would often be on somebody's roof. And what happens if you have a situation where you have the chassan, the kala, and somebody else on the roof in the sukkah? The chassan needs to go to the bathroom, and now what you have is the kala is left with this other person. And it could be yichud, could be a married, right? We don't want a married woman to be alone with another man. Rava says it's because of the discomfort of the chassan, because a sukkah only needs to be 2 tefach walls, it's kind of an open space, and the chassan wants that privacy with his wife, and therefore it's uncomfortable for him, so therefore we don't want to have the chuppah in the sukkah. My benai was the nafkamina. The nafkamina is, if there are people around by the sukkah, that, so if there are people around, so you don't have to worry about yichud. Abai is concerned about yichud is irrelevant now. But in terms of the chassan not having privacy, well, he's still not going to have privacy. Reb Zera says, Reb Zera, what I did was, we ate in the sukkah, and we had simcha by the chuppah, and it was givaldig, and I'll tell you a secret, it was mamash gewalt, because I was able to dance at 2 weddings, so to speak. I was able to get both, to chaparayim, eating and being mekayim the mitzvah of sukkah, as well as the happiness of the chasana. Cheve, that was daf chaf hey of Masechta Sukkah. It was a givaldig daf, I think, right? So the first part of the daf, we wrapped up yesterday's discussion about walls of a sukkah, that they have to be sturdy, and we said even if like you're in a field with like wheat and stuff, and you want to use the wheat as walls, they would have to be sturdy. Then we said that somebody who's doing a mitzvah is patur from the sukkah. So then we discussed what is the source for Osek b'mitzvah, patur min a mitzvah. We first saw the source coming from Kriyas Shema, which is something that a Gemara that we've seen at least on 2 occasions, I feel like even 3, which is that you're chayiv to read Kriyas Shema when you are going somewhere volitionally. But if you're on your way to a mitzvah, you're going to be patur from Kriyas Shema. We then brought another proof, which was that by Korban Pesach, we say that, you could bury an immediate relative and be osek in the mitzvah of burying a relative, even if it means that you're going to be unable to bring the Korban Pesach, because osek b'mitzvah patur min a mitzvah. Okay, we had learned along the way that an Ovel is chayiv in all the mitzvahs in the Torah except for tefillin, because it says about them glory. And there was an interesting Gemara there at the end about, a chassan, and all the people involved in the chasana are going to be patur from sukkah. And then we saw at the end, though, Reb Zera says, look, he chapped around and was able to, still eat in the sukkah even when he was a chassan, and that was really amazing. Cheve, that was Daf Chafei. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. Cheers.